Principles, the podcast where we dive deep into the truth, tenderness, and the transformative power of pleasure. I'm your host Avik, and today we are stepping into a world of masks, magic, and the sexual healing. So, dear listeners, what if I told you that the costume you wear could be the key to unlocking a deeper truth within you? That behind the playful act of role play or the cosplay lies the potential for profound emotional liberation. Yes, so our guest today knows that journey intimately. So please welcome Dr. Stephanie Hunter Jones, PhD. So welcome to the show, Dr. Stephanie.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And that was a beautiful introduction.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And uh, dear
Such a
listeners,
powerful and beautiful subject that doesn't get enough attention and has so much potential to heal. And so, thank you very much for having me on.
exactly, very true. I mean, it is not everyone talk about this, and yeah, and sometimes I also feel like this has become somewhere a taboo kind of thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely would love to talk about this. But before we delve deep into this, dear listeners, I'd love to introduce you with Dr. Stephanie. So,
Mhm.
dear listeners, Dr. Stephanie is a clinical sexologist, certified intimacy coach, author of Beyond the Costume Finding Love and Emotional Healing Through Cosplay, and someone who turns storytelling into a sacred act of sexual empowerment. So, from working with LGBTQ plus youth to supporting survivors of sexual trauma, Dr. Stephanie helps people reclaim their bodies and rewrite their pleasure stories. And today, she's going to show us how role play and power dynamics, far from being like just for fun, can actually become some of the most healing tools in our erotic toolbox. So I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
Lovely. So, Dr. Stephanie, like your book is a beautiful fusion of storytelling and the healing.
Mhm.
So, uh, if I may ask, like, how did cosplay and the role play become part of your personal and the professional path to the healing?
Because I myself used it
Mm,
to heal my own sexual trauma. And I remember at the time, this was years ago, I carried a lot of shame for it. And I was embarrassed. And it wasn't until my later years that I met others that had similarities. In fact, when I was working on my bachelor's, I worked for 2 years at a dungeon in Los Angeles, and a BDSM dungeon with cosplay, role play was a part of it. And that is what opened me to realizing I wasn't alone. And I created the book because so many individuals are interested in it, but and then so many individuals have that in them, but are ashamed of it. And so I created the book to help the main character, Ethan. He had it since he was a child. As he grew up, learn to accept himself and use it actually as a tool to attract love and become who he wants to be in his life. Because when we accept who we are, that's
mm,
when we open the door to things that we desire.
exactly. Very truly said. Yep. And if also like, how do you distinguish between escapism and embodiment when someone uses the role play or the cosplay to explore the parts of themselves?
I'm sorry, you'll have to say that again.
Oh, okay.
Apologize.
So, and
Oh,
yeah, I'm saying like how you differentiate or distinguish between escapism and embodiment.
that's a very good question. Why must there be a difference? Because isn't part of our sexuality
Mm,
escapism and embodiment?
yeah.
So I question why there must be a difference.
Mm,
If you escape by yourself or if you escape with your partner to that place,
mm,
there's no shame in either. I worked with a female client that the only way that she could masturbate is by dressing up like Marie Antoinette and walking around her apartment for a couple of hours and being her. And then that freed her to masturbate and have a beautiful experience. That was escapism, and that was also embodiment.
Hmm.
So that's a great question.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I mean, I have to say that, I mean, that really resonates because so many of us um grew up suppressing our identities, right? Like just to
Mhm.
feel safe or I'd say the accepted. And I really love that you are showing how stepping into costume can actually help us step out of the shame. So,
Oh, absolutely.
amazing.
Now,
Yeah.
if you look at the furry community, which is something completely different than cosplay, they individuals use the furry to express themselves emotionally. They feel safe. It's not
Mm,
just about sex. It's a very important tool for individuals to express themselves. Cosplay is the same way. It invites in creativity, it invites in a safety, and you can be who you want to be. Let's say you have a hard time expressing your sexual desires to your partner, which is very common.
mm,
I would encourage couples then to create a scene using characters where they dress and they become that character. And I have to say, it's almost 100% effective that they grow from it. They're able to express what they want as sort of this character versus who they are.
yeah.
And then we process it afterwards, how it was for them. Why was it
Mm,
difficult for them to share without the costume? And so they grow together in that way till they can use cosplay or they don't have to use cosplay. But it is a tool to get the ball rolling.
yeah. Mm, true.
And you don't have to be alone, by the way, if you're single. There's many cosplay communities out there that are wonderful that you can find a partner to play.
Mm,
And it does not have to always be sexual. We must remember that.
yeah. Mm, extremely true. Yeah. So, like, um, if you also talk about, but you talk a lot about power dynamics, not in the kink, but in everyday life. Like,
Right.
uh, so how do play scenarios help people consciously explore the power, consent, and autonomy? What do you say?
Mhm. I would say one of the number one um, causes of couples not connecting sexually is power dynamic, power dynamics. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes we don't even realize that power is at play within the relationship. One person could have a little bit more control over something that they don't even realize it. And so the other partner is unconsciously either shutting down sexually or withholding sex to reclaim the power in the relationship. So what I usually do, after a couple of sessions, I can tell what's going on with the couple and what directions
Mm,
that I need to take them.
yeah.
So what I usually do if I know that there is a power dynamics at play, before I even describe to them what I think it is, I assign them two role plays. One is where the one partner is in the position of power and the other is more submissive. And then they flip it for the next role play. And then what we do is we discuss how it felt
Yeah.
and what it brought up for each of them. And then I explain how power is playing in their relationship, playing a role. And
Yes.
they usually get it. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah. And usually what they'll say is one will say, I was uncomfortable with this role, but I was felt great with this role.
Mm,
And vice versa.
yeah.
So they learn their personal relationship to power
Mm,
because power affects our sexuality with others. Power sometimes can keep us from being vulnerable and letting go, which is a very which takes me back to cosplay. Cosplay gives the individual sort of a permission to be vulnerable and to surrender, which is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful
Mm.
form of art.
True. Exactly. Wow. And and like, do you find that certain roles or the dynamics people um gravitate towards the um, reflect parts of their healing journey, like reclaiming power, processing trauma, or even maybe reconnecting with the emotions also. Like,
Mhm.
what do you say?
So, first of all, we got to remember,
Mm.
and what I'm going to say is probably going to be it's going to be challenging for some of your listeners, but I just invite everyone to have an open mind here. So, our mind wants to turn pain into pleasure. Now, what happens in that situation? I'll give you an example. I had a couple come to me that was so distraught because she had been raped prior to their marriage.
Okay,
And now, at that point, she was having sexual fantasies about being raped.
okay.
And I had to explain to them that that was
Mhm.
part of her healing journey. Her mind was trying to turn that pain into pleasure. And instead of fighting against that, embrace that. And the husband was so loving to her and supportive and non judgmental. And I said, let's do some exciting, fabulous role play where your husband fulfills that fantasy for you. And so I worked with them over a period of probably like 18 months, something like that. Again, processing their feelings along the way. There was one point where they were just having a great time. They loved it. And then
Right.
we kept processing it until finally she came in and she says, I don't have that fantasy anymore. I said, honey, of course you don't, because you embraced that part of yourself that needed to heal. You see, our sexuality can heal so much in our lives if we allow it and
Right.
if we don't shame ourselves for certain
Mhm.
things.
Lovely said, I would say. It's really, really lovely. I mean, that's so layered and beautiful
Mhm.
because it's like, if I say like you are saying the scenes we create can become the sacred spaces.
Mhm.
And
Now, may I share another one that is
please,
an amazing story? So I had a young client. She was probably 24. When she came in, to me, she looked a little bit like a silent movie star.
mm,
She had suffered extreme sexual abuse from her grandmother. She was so traumatized that she could not even express her sexuality. So I went in a direction without sex. And I started questioning her about her look. And she goes, I don't know. I've just always, for some reason, been attracted to that. I said, well, let's explore that. And I encouraged her. I want her to just start dressing like that all the time. I wanted her to start exploring the old films and the old stars. I worked with her. She brought in her work, what she found on these particular stars, this particular star, until one day she came in and she says, now I know. I said, what? She said, I was this star in a past life. I said, how did you know? She said, because when I read her story, she suffered the same abuses I did. And she says, now I know it's my job to heal from it. Now, whether that's true or not does not matter because it gave her permission to heal.
exactly. that realization and that inner power, I would also say, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And if that made her connect to what she needed to heal, then who who is to judge or shame for that?
Exactly.
In fact, that should be celebrated to individuals that use more creative tools to heal.
Exactly. Wow. Lovely. I mean, thanks for sharing this because this will this definitely gonna resonate with a lot of listeners. I believe dear listeners. I believe maybe if you're listening right now or you'll be listening later, um, maybe I mean, you are in your bedroom or in your dining and you're thinking about this, listening. So don't fear. Just
Mhm,
relax. Take that time, and
mhm,
definitely there is a way.
mhm.
So
Right. You know, may I also say that I know in most societies, sex is so serious.
yeah.
While there is a part of it that is, don't misunderstand me, there's a huge part of it that is supposed to be playful and fun. And a lot of times we miss out on that. Penetration and orgasm is a very small part of sexuality. It's a very small part. There's so much more you can explore within your sexuality if you give yourself permission to play and have fun.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. And like I was mentioning about the listeners, so like many of our listeners grew up in a like you mentioned about like the sex is somewhere um it's very kind of serious thing or it's a very taboo thing. So maybe
Mhm,
we'll also take this scenario as well. Like many of our listeners also grew up in a deeply religious or conservative environments.
mhm,
The perfect word, conservative. So uh, where even thinking about pleasure felt a taboo, right?
mhm,
So, how does your trauma informed or the pleasure positive approach help people unlearn the sexual shame?
mhm. Well, that's a great question because unlearning is a personal choice. I always have a high success rate with clients that come in with an open mind and they're willing to get out of their comfort zone.
Mm,
Now, we did not come out of the wound of our mothers with these sexual taboos. We came out sexual beings. We felt our feelings. We cried. We were hungry. We wanted to, as we grew up and 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, we wanted to touch ourselves. That is normal. We had normal feelings. But along the way, there are individuals that
mm,
molded and controlled our sexuality to keep us under control. So we have to explore our personal sexual history. Where did that come from? And is that my sexual truth? Do I even know my sexuality? Our sexuality is an amazing energy that we can use not just for sex. You anything you do in your life that you feel passionate about or that you're good at or you feel excited about, you're using your sexual energy. And anything you do using your sexual energy, you're going to be great at it. So I always try to work with individuals to get in touch with that energy by other ways of using it through gardening, through art, through cooking, what brings you that passion? And then what does that energy look like and feel like in that moment? That's your real energy that was suppressed.
yeah,
And then exploring that then in ways in the bedroom.
exactly.
There's a whole world within your sexuality. It's a magical
Mm,
world.
very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And uh, what do you say to someone who still struggles with the guilt that when they feel desire or want to explore fantasy?
So guilt is the opposite of love. So I would say in that moment that you're feeling guilt, are you coming from a place of love?
Mm,
If the answer is no, then you might want to take control of your emotions. Now, the only we can control as human beings, we can control our emotions. There are some that cannot, and those are the individuals in prison and whatnot. But the majority of humans, is it easy? No. They can control their emotions. So in that moment, they feel guilt. They can say, now, am I coming from a place of love? Love for myself? Love for my partner? There's no way. If you're feeling guilt, you're not in the place of love. You're not. So you have to make a decision. Where do you want to be? The decision is yours. I remember one of my couples I worked with for a long time. They were in a completely open relationship, and they had come from a culture that was extremely religious and conservative. And I had to ask her one time, how did you guys get to this point? And she said, I made the decision one day that I love this man so much and he loves me so much that we want each other to experience pleasure to the fullest while we're on this planet. You see, they came from a place of love.
mm,
That's when I know couples come to me and they're wanting to open up the relationship or explore, first I have to find out the reasons why.
yeah,
Is it coming from the place of love or the place of lack? And we have to, if it's coming from the place of lack, then I have to work with that.
mm,
Um, so, but again, if you're feeling guilt, you're not in the
mm,
place of love. They cannot coexist together.
exactly. Mhm. Wow. So, wow. I mean, it's really, it's wild how deep that shame can run. And
Yes.
yeah, and I really appreciate like how you normalize the curiosity and make a room for pleasure to be kind of emotional, deeply human, and not just physical. So, yeah.
hmm
Right.
You know, when I was working at the dungeon, I would have clients that would come in and they would just want to do role plays,
Okay.
non-sexual, just role plays, and some unique ones. One was this one man. Every time he came in, he was a preacher from the 1700s, and I was a witch, and he had to convict me and burn me at the stake every time. And I in the moment I thought that was so fascinating, interesting. And now, even now, I don't know why he needed that. Was it past life? Was there something in his DNA that maybe his ancestor was that way? I don't know, but it brought him joy and happiness every time, and I thought it was just so fascinating.
Yeah.
And there were many individuals that would come in to do role play like that. So I think it's a little bit more common than what we think. But then because of the shame of it, we're afraid to talk about it. Like, it shouldn't be that way. Like, we gotta stick with the rigid rules of the seriousness of the way sex should look or the way emotions should look.
Mm, exactly. Wow. Wow. Amazing. Lovely.
Mhm,
And like some people dismiss role play, cosplay, or kink as just like fringe or fetish.
mhm.
But your work argues the opposite. So why do you believe that these practices can be not only legitimate but be deeply therapeutic also?
Absolutely. Now, can they also be a fetish or a kink? Yeah, they can, but they don't always have to be. But and if they are a fetish and a kink, that's okay. That's okay too. And usually when they're a fetish and a kink, they happen usually in childhood then. Growing up, that's why I start my character in my book as a young boy. He already knew his character at that moment, and he was ashamed of it. Kinks and fetishes start in childhood. You know the difference in a kink and a fetish?
Uh, yeah, I mean, if we can share.
Sure.
Yeah.
A kink is just something that turns you on, but you don't have to have it to be aroused or to orgasm. A fetish is something that you need to be aroused and to orgasm. And just as many women have it as men. And there's no shame, but you have to understand if you get a partner that has a fetish, you're marrying that fetish too. You're with that fetish, and you have to understand that and not shame them over it over time. So it takes a very special individual to understand that someone with a fetish is very unique and special and to embrace that.
Exactly. Ooh, lovely. Wow.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Fetishes,
yeah.
by the way, there should be no shame on fetishes or kinks. Those, again, should be celebrated.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna ask?
Yeah, no, no, I'm saying like that's true. That's true, definitely.
Mhm.
So I have one thing. So basically, what happens? Like I also try to bring few of the chats or the group discussions. Though I'll not take the names, but uh, so it might sounds contradictory, but it's actually not. Like uh, some critics argue that using fantasy to process the trauma can um, blur the boundaries or even re-traumatize. So, how do you ensure that these tools are used ethically and safely as well?
Mhm. Well, I would wonder about those critics and where they're getting their information from, because most of the studying I've done has been the opposite. And I would also would like to know their personal views on it.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of um, critics out there that shame people that have sexual fantasies. And our mind is a very important tool in our sexuality and in our healing. And I would completely disagree that if someone came to me and said they're having these type of fantasies, I would not sit there and shame them and tell them, "You're gonna damage yourself more." Why? Because if you do that, it makes the fantasies out of control. So you have to give them permission. It's only a fantasy. And by giving it permission, I promise you, I've worked with I have seen it over the years, over and over again. I have had the experience. It goes away. No matter the fantasy, if you encourage them to embrace it and it's just a fantasy, it over time it goes away. Because if we're running from something and we're
Mm.
scared and shamed of something, it's going to haunt us for the rest of our life. But if you stand up to something and you face it, it's going to flee eventually. So I would just strongly, due to my experience and my own personal experience, I would strongly disagree with those critics. So,
Understood. Thank you so much for sharing that.
mhm.
And Dr. Stephanie, I mean, this has really been one of the most nuanced, affirming, and soul opening conversation, I'd say, because uh, we have had a pleasure principles. And
Mhm.
you have reminded us that sexuality is not something that we need to fix or
Right,
fit into. It's something that we get to feel, explore, and own. So,
right,
exactly. I
exactly.
mean, yeah.
How
Thank you.
beautifully said.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Mhm.
also, like from behind the mask of a character to the truth beneath our skin, um, the the journey to pleasure is one of the permission, I'd say, and permission to imagine, to feel, to transform, and to be free. So there is no attachment or no strings attached, like that thing. So uh, definitely, it's definitely true. And listeners, like if you are curious about how cosplay, storytelling, or conscious kink can support your emotional and the sexual healing, then please do check out Dr. Stephanie's incredible book, Beyond the Costume. The link will be in the show notes. And it's more than a book, I'd say. It's a brave invitation back to self.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to your listeners for listening to my truth. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. And also, Dr. Stephanie, if someone wants to connect with you after reading the book and maybe after this episode also, what will be the best medium to connect?
My website, it's stephaniehunterjones.com. And everything's on there, my media, my artwork, my books, everything, appointment information, anything they might need. And that's stephaniehunterjones.com.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put this link as well into the show notes for your easy reference. And
Thank you.
as always, I invite all of you to reflect what parts of yourself are longing to be seen. Where could play lead you into the power, and also like what would it feel like to say yes to you? So with this hope, until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and never stop reclaiming your pleasure. So thank you so much.